Attending community college always felt like a drag, but this semester had an air of suspense that made it different. A crow cause, breaking the eerie silence of the campus, only adding to everyone's paranoia. Anyone on campus could sense it. The winter break had ended. Everyone carried a mix of exhaustion and apprehension. The murmur of recent disappearances and murders heavy in the air, electrifying the atmosphere. Naturally, the gossip swirling around excluded me since I orchestrated the murders. It was a position that had its own set of burdens and secrets that heavily weighed on me. However, there was no need for anyone to uncover that unsettling detail. They were all unaware of the truth, and I intended to keep it that way. Most students were hanging out at the nearby convenience store, so I headed for an empty bench. I put my backpack down by my legs as I fish out my phone. I cross my arms as I scroll through my phone. I didn't have anything to do with it. I could pretend that I did. I spent 5 minutes staring at the dark screen, at least that's what I was doing. I soon heard people walking nearby. I suppose they're talking about the murders until I realize that they're not. It's a bunch of grown men making fun of someone's outfit. I discreetly attempted to bring up my head. I couldn't help but be nosy. God, save me. I felt a surge of gratitude for taking a moment to observe her, as I had begun to think I was gazing directly into heaven itself. If I couldn't reach that ethereal realm after my time on Earth, at least I was fortunate enough to witness her beauty while I still breathed. Her skin was a shade of pale ivory, reminiscent of fine porcelain, so flawless and smooth that it seemed to glow softly in the light. It was as if she had stepped out of a timeless painting, embodying grace and charm. Her black hair was cut short yet styled with an effortless flair, the sleek strands shining with an almost raven-like richness. The bangs framed her face perfectly, accentuating her striking features. She had an enchanting aura, radiating a vintage glamour that made me think of Clara Bow, the iconic silent film actress. It felt as if Clara herself had somehow been resurrected in front of me, bringing an old-world elegance into the present moment. Each detail about her was captivating, entranced by the spell she cast around her. However, the beautiful art piece looked lost, out of place, and pathetic, like a flightless bird. She'd heard the words muttered as the group of men had passed by her. She appeared embarrassed by her fancy outfit. She wore a black dress with a fitted bodice and a white, angular neckline. The dress was sleeveless and had a sleek shape, paired with short gray gloves with cute bows tying them for a polished look. The puffy skirt featured hanging white accents and delicate black bows. She looked behind her and ahead, staring straight at where I sat. I quickly averted my gaze back down to my locked phone. I was attempting to play it smooth. Click-clack, I looked up almost immediately as I heard the demanding sounds of her high heels. Now she stood directly in front of me. As I stared at her and looked into her eyes, I felt my heart twist, swell, and squeeze all at once, and my stomach was warm and queasy. "Hi, would you mind if I sat with you?" she asked me. Her voice was heavenly and soft like a plush cloud, but so low in volume that I might have missed it if she wasn't the very black hole that sucked up all my attention. "Yeah, of course. Wait. No, I don't mind at all." I managed to stammer. I moved to the side and took my backpack as well. I wanted to give her the part of the bench I had already warmed up. She smiled at me. Her black lipstick didn't even crease as she did so. That's how perfect she was. Even the most uncontrollable things gave in to her whims. As she sat down next to me, a wave of her scent washed over me. An earthy aroma suddenly surrounded me, like the smell of the streets after a heavy downpour. How romantic. "I'm Elisa," she introduced herself. "Elisa? What a fitting name for someone so elegant." "Oh, I'm Max," I answered, putting my phone back into my pocket so I didn't appear uninterested. She tilted her head as she rested her elbow on the table attached to the bench. She spoke once more. "Max? That's a wonderful name. Did you know that it means the greatest?" I shook my head. "No, I've never really thought about the meanings of names. We're already on the topic. What's your name mean?" I questioned Elisa. She slowly blinked as if she was not expecting a question. She promptly answered, "Elisa means God's promise." I quickly, almost too quickly, asked, "So, are you religious?" She was the one to shake her head no this time. Almost on cue, an alarm on my phone went off and I shut it. I should be heading to class. I turned to Elisa, who was looking a little lower than where my face was, but as soon as she saw my head turn, she was looking into my eyes. "I gotta head to my class. Maybe we can meet and talk after our lectures," I suggest, hoping she agrees. "Of course I'd love to," she said, looking elated even more than how I felt at her answer. I stood up and picked up my backpack. I then noticed she was already gone from my side. She was walking in the opposite direction of where my classes were. It only occurred to me that she had gone in the complete opposite direction of where all the classes were. So where was she going? She must have just been lost, right? I head to my class, my only subjects being psychology and math. At least I didn't have to take math in person. I could finish that at home. The lecture was long and repetitive, as it had always been. However, I took notes anyway. The last thing I needed to do was to fail the only class I looked forward to learning about. As the professor says goodbye, all the students stand up, other than the few who have already drifted away to La La Land. I grab my backpack and exit the class. My eye immediately caught Elisa's figure. She just stood there, looking at me. I walked up to her as I guessed she was most likely here to see me. "Hey Elisa, are you waiting for me?" I asked her as I approached. "Of course, Max, who else would I be here for?" Elisa answered with a soft smile gracing her face. I furrowed my brows, a bit confused. How did she know where I was in this big building? "How'd you know where my class was?" Once those words left my mouth, her eyebrows slumped into a confused expression. "Well, I followed you when you left to go to class, and I've just been waiting outside. I ditched my class." "I'm sorry. I know that was weird of me." "Really? I'm sure I saw you go the opposite way when I left." I recall out loud. She looked a little more distressed and nervous now, her hands reaching up to her golden necklaces, pendant, fiddling with it apprehensively. "Are you sure that's not how I remember it?" She spoke softly. I felt awful for confusing her so much. She looked so frightened. An expression I usually only see in the faces of my victims, right? Before I snuff out the lights that are their lives. I shake my head before agreeing. Yeah, I think I remember that." Elisa's face immediately brightened up, any trace of her prior uneasiness gone. She swiftly took my cold hand in her slender, gloved one and walked us off the campus. Curiosity gets the best of me, and I ask her, "How come you wear gloves? Plus the bows are so tightly tied that has to be cutting off your blood circulation." Elisa's grip falters as she looks at me. It makes my hands look thinner, more feminine, I suppose. It doesn't hurt too bad. "Well, I mean, I guess it's working if your hands look any different without them." "Aw, thank you, Maxie." "Maxie? Never been called that one before." "Really? It seems very common. It suits you regardless." Blood rushes to my face as we step onto the sidewalk. "My bus stop is that way." "Do you take the bus?" I ask Elisa, as I let go of her hand to walk towards it. "I've got to pick up my cousin from her high school, so I'll be driving." "Bye, Maxie." "Bye, Elisa." That night I came back home a bit later than usual. I allow my dog Baxter to enter first. I let his leash go. I checked the clock on my wall. It was 1:30. I removed my blood-stained coat and slipped my mask from my face, placing it down on the TV stand. I walked to my bathroom, scrubbing the blood out of my coat into the sink. After thoroughly washing it, I wring out the water and hang it to air dry. Entering my bedroom, I change into my nightwear. I then lay down in bed with all the lights turned off. As I lay down in the bed, the room is engulfed in an unsettling presence, as if something were in the house with me. That's about when I heard the same noises I'd been hearing for the last couple of days. Tap, tap, tap. There was banging on the side of my house, then stomping on the roof. Then back to the sides. Then, a light on the wooden front door before I heard the stomps above me. Again. Then my head turned to Baxter, who had up until now been peacefully lying on the floor. He now had his tail tucked as he growled and barked. How could this be? What even was this? To be able to move so fast in a matter of mere seconds, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. The hairs on my neck stood, and a cold sweat dripped down my forehead. Was this the guilt of all the murders catching up to me? Why so prolonged, though? As I pondered all these questions, a feeling began to dawn on me. A feeling that I hadn't felt any other time. Something was watching me, and it didn't feel like it was human. My window sat right to the side of my bed. I hadn't closed the curtains, and now I had to pay the price. I sat up, raising my upper body. Then, I looked out the window to the left, but my mind knew the feeling came from the right. I didn't want to see what would be staring back at me. I eventually turned to the right, squinting my eyes through the darkness. The moonlight showed me a tree in the empty street ahead. That's when I saw it. A figure. It was leaning its head on the tree's trunk, its arms by its side. I could see no prominent features other than how its body was twisted at the arms, blending in with the gnarled branches behind it. It was the first time the cause of all the noises revealed itself. My heart got stuck in my throat and my eyes widened. What the hell was that? Was it trying to look human? I quickly stood up, ran to the window and closed the curtains. Crunch, crack. Crunch. It got closer to the window, breaking what seemed to be a stick in the dirt. I knew it was standing right in front of the window, unmoving. The only thing separating me from that thing was the curtain. I quickly stepped back, closing the other curtain and locking my bedroom door. As I shakily returned to my bed, I checked the window. A warped shadow peeked through the crack like the gas above a stove. That thing was trying to cover up its presence. Now Baxter was cowering near the window, whimpering and whining at whatever was behind that curtain. That thing had struck fear into the most aggressive dog I'd ever met. Dread washed over me at the realization. I lie back down, using my sheets to cover myself, trying to call Baxter to come to me to no avail. I didn't want him to freak out and tear the curtains off the railing that held it. All I could think was how grateful I was that it couldn't get inside unless it could. It would only ever make noises. Would it try to enter this time? I closed my eyes. Its presence seemingly made the room temperature drop and the air thicken. I was practically heaving for even the slightest amount of oxygen. The air had a foul stench, the copper I'd smell after one of my outings. I soon slipped into a restless sleep, knowing that whatever was out there stood outside, unmoving. What did it want? I woke up the next day, tiredly standing up. I didn't have a lesson in person today. I could relax after last night's event. I stretched my arms and cracked my neck. I stood up, noticing Baxter was sleeping at the foot of my bed. At least he got to sleep after that awful night. Approaching my mirror, I took notice of my darkened and sunken eyes. My freckled face was pale, and my brown hair stuck up everywhere as if I had fought off that beast while I slept. However, I only dreamt of that beautiful Elisa, like a soothing balm to heal the terrors I had witnessed that night. I slip on a striped cardigan and jeans. I quickly slide on slippers to head outside. As I leave my bedroom, I keep the door open, just in case Baxter wants to roam. Once I've completely stepped out of the house and into the cold air, I turn to see if there's any noticeable damage, as I've done every other morning. And like every other time I've checked, nothing at all. Then I walk to where my right bedroom window was. I notice something new. The first thing is the dirt near the window. It was smooth, seemingly with small triangular shapes, almost like the tip of a shovel, as if it knew I was checking the house. It was covering up its traces. As I look closer at the dirt, I spot the stick it had stepped on last night. It had burst into splinters. The sight made me ponder. Did that thing do this on purpose? Or as a measly show of its strength? I decided to step away. Ending my rounds, I turned as I heard someone calling my attention from the street. "Good morning, Maxie," Elisa greeted cheerfully, waving a hand as she spotted me in my yard. "Good morning, Elisa." I raised my hand awkwardly, acknowledging her presence. "Would you like to join me for a walk? We could sit down to eat somewhere too," she softly spoke as she walked up my steps, coming straight towards me. As she approaches, I notice her new outfit. She wore black slacks with a maroon turtleneck, new black gloves with bows, and kept her original black high heels. She made any simple outfit look elegant. That must have been her very own charm. Multiple harsh caws ripped me from my thoughts. I raised my gaze to look at the murder of crows littering the street. They sat on dead trees and utility poles, almost blending in with the gray skies behind them, bringing my attention to Elisa, realizing I had drifted off thinking about her. "Oh yeah, sorry, sure. Is it all right if I bring my dog too for his walk?" I respond quickly, awkwardly motioning to my bedroom window where Baxter was last sleeping. Elisa turns her head to my hand motion, looking into my bedroom window before answering. "I'm so incredibly sorry, Maxie. I'm allergic to dogs. Is it okay if we walk alone?" She delicately fiddled with her pendant, sorry that she'd ruined time spent with my dog. I put my hand down. "Yeah, of course. It's not a problem." She turned her head back towards me with a smile. I then looked towards the window where Elisa had been staring and saw Baxter peering through the curtains to look straight at us as he held his paws on the sill. His eyes were dark, and his ears pulled back against his skull. It was a strange sight for the brave Doberman I had lived with. He must have been worried about me being outside after last night's events. He'd always act strange in the mornings anyway. I'd be fine. As I head down the steps and onto the streets with Elisa, I notice how many crows are lining the entire street. A few flutter before sitting back down. Then I hear a few sounds that don't sound like crows, much more harsh and ominous. Two ravens swoop down from a tree, revealing themselves to the now angered crows. The ravens swoop past Elisa and me as we walk. The crows, now upset at the sight of the ravens, simultaneously fly away together and sink above my house and away. I wonder why they're gathering here so much. It doesn't get any warmer here in the winter, I say out loud. Maybe they're taking longer to migrate. They're very adorable anyway, Elisa responded. Adorable? I think they're more off-putting than adorable. Agree to disagree then, I guess. Noticing the street we were on, we walked out of my neighborhood and closer to the shops. "Do you want to eat at one of these cafes?" she asked me, looking through the windows of some shops. Sure, I didn't have time to eat breakfast. Elisa beamed at my answer, wrapping her hand around my own while leading me. Marvelous, I know a nice place that has breakfast items. Once we arrived at the cafe, we were almost immediately seated. It was empty, but it was an early weekday. People were at work and school. I took notice of the decor of the cafe. It looked like we had stepped into the rockin' 50s. Maybe Elisa liked the 50s considering her dress from the day before. Our server soon approached us with a notepad in his hand, speaking. "Hey guys, are you ready to order? Or do you need a second?" Elisa answered quickly. "I'm ready to order. Could I get the New York steak? Rare, please." The server nods, jotting that down before joking. "Making sure to get the meat early before it runs out?" Elisa grinned before replying. "I've already had my fill from breakfast. Now, Maxie, do you know what you want?" I raise my eyebrows at the sudden question. Skimming over the breakfast menu, I finally speak up. I'll have the Monroe morning, please." The man nods and heads off. "So, Elisa," I start, "how come you didn't order something sweet?" I thought sweet women like sweet things. Sweet things are nice but not fulfilling. I'm more into savory than sugary. I suppose you're right. It looks cute and tastes nice. I guess it's just not meant to satisfy you. Elisa nods before speaking up once. "Oh, I think that's our food over there." She then used her index and middle fingers to pluck off her glove from her right hand, and then did the same with her left. She kept the bows on her wrists. They appeared to be bracelets that could attach to the gloves. How nifty of her. As the plates reach our table, we cut into our meals. I took slow bites of my pancake, which had whipped cream and fruit. Elisa cut pieces off her juicy steak and chewed away at them in her mouth. I watched as she happily ate her steak, occasionally using a napkin to wipe off the dripping juices of the red steak. "Elisa, I think it's already dead. No need to rush," I joked, watching as she looked up at me. She smiled with her mouth open. That's when I noticed something hanging off two of her teeth. It looked small and white, maybe a tonsil stone gone loose. I decided not to say anything about it. I didn't want to embarrass her. Once we finished our plates, we asked for the check. The total had come out to be $31.30. Elisa and I pulled out our wallets at the same time. "I can pay for the meals. I'm the gentleman here, right?" I persisted. She grimaced at my words before cutting back. "I invited you, I should pay." She quickly called over our server, handing him a stack of bills, half of which seemed to be his tip. Afterward, she slipped on her gloves. We took our leave shortly after. Once more, we were outside in the nipping cold wind. Elisa coyly slid her arm into my own, interlocking us. As we strolled down the streets, Elisa looked into all the jewelry stores we passed by, so I asked her, "Do you like gold or silver better?" She turned to face me before answering. "I like gold better, it stands out more. Silver would only blend in with my clothes and skin." I nod. She was right. We walked back to my house in silence. As we approached my steps, I realized some crows were back to sit on the utility poles. They must have known the ravens disappeared already. I break the silence by asking, "Do you want to hang out at my house for a while? It's not very late right now." Elisa was silent before she nodded, so we walked up the steps. I opened my door, entering first before catching on to how rude that might have seemed. "Crap, I'm sorry, come in, please." I moved out of the way. Elisa smiled at me as she stepped inside my house. "You've got a nice place. Did you furnish it yourself?" "Yeah, I live alone, other than, my dog." "Right, your dog. Where is he?" "I'm not sure. He'll show up when he's ready." Elisa only responded with a curt nod as she looked around my living room. Her eyes landed on my mask on the TV stand. Shit. I didn't put that away. She walked up to the weird-looking mask and picked it up. "What's this?" she questioned. That's just an old Halloween actress mask. My mom gifted it to me. Nothing important." "Yeah, I just thought it was weird. It's so feminine," she responded, putting the mask back down on the stand. We sat down on my couch afterward. Elisa leaned into my side, my arm wrapped around her shoulder. She mindlessly played with her necklace as she rested her head on my shoulder. After 30 minutes of relaxing and listening to each other's light breathing, Elisa lifted her head. She stood up, turning to me. "Maxie, I've got to pick up my cousin from school. Thank you for having me. This was nice." I nodded. Of course, you're welcome here anytime." "That's wonderful to hear. Bye now, Maxie." She waved goodbye as she walked out my door. I stood up, stretching as I went to my bedroom, the door for some reason now shut. I opened the door. I heard Baxter's whining from under my bed. I turned to the door, noticing that it had his scratches on it.